My happiest day was coming to an end. The engagement party was winding down, and the guests were gradually leaving the house. As they left, they wished us good luck and threw us a short, "Congratulations," sometimes staying longer to discuss what they hadn't had time to do during the evening. Just a couple of hours ago, Marat put a solitaire ring on my finger in front of everyone and announced that from now on I was his destiny and we would go on with our lives together. Leaving the owner of the house to see the guests off, I took a glass of champagne and headed for the balcony. It was stuffy in the hall. I wanted to freshen up and breathe in the cool evening air. As I approached the exit to the balcony, I heard women's voices. "Do you think Marat will marry her?" "I doubt it. There's nothing special about her, and it's all so fast." I stopped in surprise. A few steps and a tub with a spreading palm tree separated me from those who were talking. I couldn't see them, but I could hear them. I could smell the faint odor of cigarettes. I didn't want to eavesdrop, but I involuntarily froze in place. The conversation continued. "I don't remember Marat ever having a normal relationship. You were seeing him too, weren't you?" "Yes, for 3 months." "Why did you break up?" "I don't know. I never understood. He's weird. He doesn't really open up. It's all in bits and pieces. He's always busy. He never stayed with me once." "Where did he find this one?" "They say she's his secretary?" "Yeah. She came for a job interview. Liked him. He took her." I turned round and walked away. Let them say what they want. I'm not going to let them spoil my mood on a day like this. I sat down in one of the armchairs and watched the hall empty. At last I had a chance to look round the house. The spacious living room was filled with small round tables covered with long white tablecloths. The light from crystal chandeliers reflected in glasses and golden vases filled with white roses and chrysanthemums. The most impressive were the paintings. All the walls were decorated with them. There was a unity of style, as if they belonged to the same artist. Marat had built the house not so long ago. It was flattering that I was to be the first mistress in his walls. I had never even dreamed of having my own house before, but here I had a whole palace. In addition to the huge living room, there were several other rooms on the ground floor. A wide marble staircase with gilded banisters led to the second floor. I'd never been upstairs, but I guessed that was where the living quarters were. We had decided that we would live together after we were engaged. It's more convenient, and there's no need to avoid rumors. That evening, we solemnly announced that the wedding was a done deal and would take place next month. 2 girls from the balcony walked past me, nodded slightly, and waved goodbye gracefully. I wonder which one of them met Marat. What difference does it make? He's marrying me. When all the guests had left and the catering staff started to tidy up the living room, Marat came up to me, extended his hand and said, "That's it. You are now my lawful bride. Come, I'll show you to your chambers." "Chambers?" I smiled. "Well, show me." This evening was going to be special. Bride and groom, it was the first time we were alone in this house. Holding hands, we slowly walked up to the first floor and stopped on the landing. I saw 2 doors. Marat smiled and said, pointing to the left, "Make yourself comfortable. This is your half. Everything you need is there. Tomorrow we'll bring your things." My half? I didn't understand. "Well, yes, the women's half. There's a bedroom, a dressing room, a spa area, a couple of other rooms. You decide their purpose." "What's to the right?" I asked in surprise. "How what?" He smiled. "The male half. Women are not allowed there." "Not even me?" "You in the first place." He laughed. "Only Darius, the housekeeper, you know her. She lives downstairs. If you need anything, you'll find her there." Marat opened the door to the left and gave me a little push. "Go and rest. It's been a hard day today. Thanks for the evening. Good night." As I followed the direction I had been given, I found myself in a corridor with several doors. All of them were open, clearly showing what was inside. I stepped into the bedroom and looked around. A wide bed covered in a plaid with cherry blossoms, curtains of the same pattern, a floor mirror, a pair of easy chairs, a chest of drawers, and an elegant table with a vase of orchids. Expensive, well made, very beautiful. Surrounded by this luxury, I felt a little alien. "It's all right, I'll get used to it," I said to myself. "This is my home now." I spent the night alone, listening for footsteps. But it was silent, with only the occasional sounds of passing cars through the open window and the barking of dogs at the other end of the cottage village. To be honest, I didn't expect to be alone that night, and I waited, but in vain. That's how my life began in this new place, and so it continued. As the days went by, nothing changed. Marat lived in his half of the house, I lived in mine. We met in the morning in the canteen, had breakfast, then got into the car and went to the firm. At work we would go about our business as if there was no engagement. At the end of the day we would get in the car again and drive home or to a restaurant, sometimes to one of the planned events. Evenings were spent together, most often in the living room. We watched TV, read, talked, and then Marat said goodbye and went to his half, wishing me good night. Sometimes he came to the Japanese-style room, but not for long. Attempts to detain him were useless. They were always followed by the same explanation. I had to work before going to bed. It looked like a simple excuse and was puzzling. What was the idea of making a female and a male half in the house? Where did it come from in a man who grew up in an ordinary village house? What kind of bliss? But I didn't want to find out and aggravate things before the wedding, so I decided to leave it as it was. After all, I'm just a bride. When I'm a wife, I'll have the right to demand it. "Come in, wife," Marat said, opening the door of our house. We were in high spirits. The wedding party had been a success. Leaving the guests behind, we took advantage of the newlyweds' right to run away, to be alone and fully experience our new status. I stepped inside and gladly kicked my shoes off my tired feet. "The only thing I'm worried about," I said, "is whether we're going left or right now." "Of course left," Marat answered. He smiled, but I could see the subtle tension in his eyes. I didn't feel like solving riddles. This was a happy day, and I wasn't going to spoil it with doubts. As I unzipped my tight corset, I headed for the stairs, but my husband called out to me, "Wait, don't hurry, we need to talk." I stopped in surprise. What kind of talk on a night like this? I had a bad feeling. "Sit down," he said, and gestured to the armchairs. We sat down, and he was silent for a few seconds, as if gathering his wits. Then he spoke. "I have a very important thing to tell you." "Speak." I was wary. "I have a brother, Makar, and he lives with me." "Where?" I didn't understand. "Here." "Why haven't I seen him?" "He doesn't leave his room." "Why, is he sick?" "In a way." "Explain." "Physically he's healthy, but he has some problems. I have to tell you." Marat paused, took off his tie and continued. "We are twins. As a child, he suffered a psychological trauma. Our mum died in front of him. He fell silent after that, hasn't said a word since. The three of us stayed with our father and lived in the village. After his death, we were assigned to different orphanages, me to an ordinary orphanage and Makar to a specialized one. We didn't see each other for several years. Then I took him and became his guardian. Is he incapacitated? Technically, yes, but in fact he's quite normal, he just doesn't speak. He's withdrawn into his own world and doesn't want to communicate with anyone but me. He doesn't go out? No, he doesn't. He can't even leave the house. I've tried to get him out, but he'd go into a panic attack. And I built this house for him. If we'd lived in a normal city flat, I couldn't have got married. I was shocked to hear that. Why didn't you tell me before? It's a very personal subject. I didn't want to talk about it to a stranger. You're a wife now, a part of me. You could have told me after the engagement. What does he do all day? Drawing or reading? Reading. I was surprised. Why? Classics, spiritual literature. He orders a lot of books online. And what does he paint? All the paintings in the house are his work. So he's a talented artist. Yes, I sell his paintings all over the world. That's amazing. Why does he have a Russian name and you have a Tatar name? My mum was Russian. My father was Tatar. My brother was born very weak. They said he wouldn't live. Mum decided to baptize him. Makar was very attached to his mother, and I liked to be with my father. He took me with him all the time, fishing, hunting, and taught me how to work on the tractor. I wondered. Makar presented himself to me, pale, with Marat's face, sullen, brooding, a little feminine. Have you tried treating him? Yes, but he refuses to go to the hospital. I brought a doctor here, a professor. He examined him and said he could help, but Makar still had to go to the clinic. My brother flatly refused, no matter how much I persuaded him. Sometimes he can be very determined. In fact, I think he's happy with the way things are, and doesn't want to change. Is Darius helping him? Yes, we've known her since childhood. She was a friend of our mother's. Does Makar know you're married? Of course he does. He knew about the engagement too. Did you ask him to go to our wedding? No, he wouldn't go. You didn't stay over because of your brother? Yeah. I feel bad for him. It's like every night before I go to bed, I go to his place. What do you do? Usually I sit in a chair and tell him about my day. He listens in silence. Then we go about our business. He reads or draws. I look at documents on my laptop or read too. We communicate even when we are silent, and it's very important for both of us. And how does he explain himself to you, with signs? Yes, with gestures, looks, facial expressions. I always know what he wants. We're very close. I got married and it's a problem for both of us. It won't be easy for Makar to get used to having someone other than him. Will you introduce me to him? Yes, and I want to ask you something. What is it? That you find a way to get along with him. I think you might be able to influence him. In what way? You're a lot like our mum. Really? You didn't tell me. I noticed it as soon as you came in for the interview. So you didn't hire me for my business skills? Yes, I grinned. Today is truly a day of discovery. Marat did not notice the bitter irony in my voice and continued, becoming more and more enthusiastic. I would like you to become friends, as much as possible. Suddenly you could be the trigger that starts the recovery process, and help break him out of the world he's hiding in. And how do you envisage that? I'm supposed to sit in a chair while he reads or writes. That's possible, but I have an idea. I want to ask him to paint your portrait. I have a feeling it would help. What do you think? I shrugged, unable to hide my disappointment. A fairy tale about love turned out to be a drama in which I was to play the lead role. Casting passed, script written, contract signed. Let's do it. Okay. Why not? I'm in, I said. When will you introduce us? Tomorrow morning. Okay, I hope you'll stay on the left side today? I can't. I have to introduce you first. Explain to him that our lives have changed, and things will be different from now on. He has to let me go willingly or he'll feel betrayed. He could become even more withdrawn. Are you suggesting I stay alone tonight? I felt anger boiling up inside me. It's just one night. Tomorrow I'll introduce you, and a new life will begin for all of us. No. No to what? He didn't understand. I'm not going to be alone on my wedding night or I'll be traumatized myself. We're going over there right now. Now? Marat asked, confused. Yes, what's the problem? I don't know, I'm not ready. I stood up resolutely and zipped up my wedding dress. But I'm ready. Let's go. Come on, don't be afraid. I'm not wearing shoes. I can't see. He followed me reluctantly. We climbed the stairs and entered the men's quarters. Marat went to one of the doors and knocked, then opened the door, looked inside and asked, Makar, may I come to see you? I've brought my wife. There was no reply, but we didn't expect one. We went in. The light in the room was dimmed, only the lamp above the armchair where a young man who looked very much like Marat was sitting. Hello, I said, and looked around defiantly. May I sit down? Today was a hard day. My legs are buzzing. Makar gave me a long look, but didn't say anything. I walked to the chair and sat down. Marat also came and stood next to me. "My name is Jana," I said. "From today I am your brother's wife and your sister-in-law." There was no reaction. Makar kept looking at me, but his gaze was expressionless, as one looks at the rain outside the window or at the fire in the fireplace. I kept silent, gathered my courage, and continued. "With my arrival, some things are going to change in the house. For instance, tonight is our wedding night, and I'd like to spend it with my husband. I hope you don't mind?" Makar was still looking at me. The expression in his eyes hadn't changed, which cheered me up, and I decided to consolidate my success. "I'd love it if you'd join us for breakfast tomorrow. I'll cook what you like." What he liked I had no idea, and I was sure he wouldn't come. Makar lowered his eyes. He sat still for a while. Then his fingers moved, as if he were fingering a rosary. I looked closer. There were indeed rosaries in his hands, but they were unusual, made of black leather in the form of rolls, one after another. I realized that the audience was over. "It was nice to meet you," I said and stood up. "I'm going to go and you two have a chat." I stopped at the door and turned round. "Marat, you don't stay long, I'm waiting for you." "Good night, Makar. See you tomorrow." I tried to hold myself steady, but I was trembling inside. The nervous tension was released only when I was in my room. Later Marat came in. I asked him, "How is he?" "Better than I expected." "Are you staying?" "Yes." Communicating with a mute person is much easier than it seems. I didn't try to make friends with Makar, but sometimes I went to his room, finding a convincing excuse. I'd bring biscuits I'd just baked, or ask him to read something from his library. The silent man didn't object. His gaze remained calm, and he didn't seem particularly interested in me. It seemed my husband had been wrong to expect me to influence his brother. One day Marat told me that Makar had agreed to paint my portrait. Without much hope of changing the situation, I began to pose. I was curious how it turned out, but the artist resolutely suppressed any attempts to peek. He stopped me with a stern look, a gesture, or simply blocked the way. I resigned myself to the fact that sooner or later I would see it anyway. I have no hurry. When the portrait was finished, Makar allowed me to look at it. I approached the painting and froze in amazement. The canvas depicted a woman who looked like me, but pregnant. She was smiling mysteriously and holding her big round belly with her hands. "How did you know?" I asked in surprise. "I haven't even told Marat yet." Makar said nothing and smiled sadly. It was the first time I had seen him smile. I was about a month away from giving birth. One evening my husband did not come home. It was strange. There were no special plans, and I waited for him for dinner as usual. He didn't answer his phone calls. Not right away, but I started to worry. And then the hospital called and said that my husband had been brought in after a road accident in a serious condition. The operation took several hours. After the operation, Marat never woke up. He fell into a coma. Those were very difficult days. I spent hours at his bedside hoping to see his eyelid flutter or his hand move. Then I would go home, visit Makar, sink tiredly into a chair, and talk about his brother without holding back my tears. Our common pain brought us closer together. We felt each other better. The news that his brother was in a coma had a strong effect on the silent man, but he didn't force him to talk. I suggested we go to the hospital together, but Makar only shook his head negatively. There was suffering in his eyes. I wanted to hug him and comfort him, but I couldn't. I was broken and needed comforting. I just didn't have the strength. Marat was in the hospital on his birthday. I came to him with a bouquet of lilies and put the flowers on the bedside table next to him. I wanted their scent to seep into his mind, where I could not penetrate no matter how hard I tried. "Congratulations," I said, stroking my lover's cheek. "This is your first birthday with me." Suddenly I was twisted by a sharp pain in my stomach. I thought I was in labor, even though it was too early. I called the nurse and was rushed to the hospital for a checkup. The doctor said it was false labor but advised me to stay in hospital for observation. After thinking about it, I returned home. I didn't want to leave Makar alone, because it was his birthday too. I baked a cake, made tea, took a present, a set of brushes and paints, and went to him. I put the tray on the table beside him and sank heavily into the chair opposite. At that moment I felt the first contraction, froze, and smiled forcefully, trying to hide my condition. Makar noticed and frowned, anxiety in his eyes. "It's all right. My stomach hurts a little," I reassured him, and then I felt my water breaking. It had started. I should have stayed in the hospital. Before I could think about what to do next, I felt the next contraction and cried out in pain. Makar jumped up and stared at me. I couldn't say anything, only moaned. The worst part was that the contractions lengthened and came one after another. I needed help. I had to call an ambulance, and the phone was in my room. Makar took me in his arms and carried me from the chair to the bed. "Help! I need an ambulance," I begged. Then I started screaming as hard as I could. "Darius, call an ambulance," and then I heard it. "It's too late, they won't make it. I'll do it myself, I can do it." I saw Darius come running in, running around the room. The childless woman had no idea what to do. Makar gave precise, clear commands. His confidence made me feel at ease. I realized that everything would be fine. I just had to try and do my job to the end. "Breathe. Push. Rest," he commanded, and I did as he told me. "Hello, nephew," said Makar, looking at the child who was screaming vigorously in his arms. A car honked from the street. "The ambulance is here," said Makar, looking out of the window. "Daria, open the gate." A few days later, Makar and I were sitting in the living room. "Are you going to tell me?" I asked. "About what?" "About your mother." He thought for a moment, looked somewhere in the distance, and then spoke. "That day my father and Marat went to the district center to get building materials and had an accident. Both of them ended up in hospital. When we were told, the mother felt sick. That same night she went into premature labor. She was pregnant? I was struck by the similarity of the situation. Yeah, 8 months pregnant. The ambulance didn't get here in time. It took 3 hours. The roads were a mess. Mum was gone. And there was no one to help. No one. It's a small village, not a single old maternity nurse. And they were all drunk. It was a holiday the day before. He stopped talking and lowered his head. She shouted, "Help!" But I couldn't do anything then. I didn't know. But this time I did. I was amazed. Fate made a circle and threw Makar into the same situation again. "I saved her 1,000 times later," he said. I looked at him questioningly and he replied, "I read, watched videos. I couldn't forgive myself for not helping then." Next day we stood at my husband's bedside in the hospital. "Hey Marat, wake up! It's me, Makar, and your wife and son are with me." Marat's eyelids trembled. He took a deep breath and opened his eyes. "I knew you would wake up when you heard my voice. Hey bro." "Hi," he whispered weakly.